Hello, and welcome to Middleside Topwise. If anyone from Rockstar Games happens to be watching this, I'd like to use this channel as my audition reel for a role in GTA 6. I'm thinking radio show host, or maybe something to do with the Epsilon.
Oh, it is really
fucking hot.
What was that? Our ongoing investigations into the prolific careers of Sam and Dan Houser have explored the many flavors of existential crisis portrayed in GTA 5, the dire times of a former third world revolutionary in GTA 4, the government-funded promotion of drugs and guns depicted in GTA San Andreas, and most recently, Red Dead Redemption 2's vision of pure anarchism and the descent into madness that came with the Industrial Revolution. Today, we will discuss 2006's Bully, a comparatively lighthearted romp about a kid from the East Coast who doesn't take shit from anyone and ends up being the leader of an anti-fascist revolution. In this installment, not only will we look into the political subtext of this lesser-known title, but I will prove to you that this game is about me personally. I am Jimmy Hopkins.
It's America! We go in there with threats and bribes until we get what we want. If all else fails, we beat the crap out of everyone. That's why I brought along backup.
Russell likes to hurt people for peace. Cool. That's enough of that. Break it up.
Oh, come on.
Before we begin, let's talk set and setting. I was raised in Belmont, Massachusetts, a small suburb of Boston where one can explore multiple small business centers, endless backyard cut-throughs and passageways, a long stretch of train tracks, and a now abandoned mental hospital known as Metropolitan State. Okay, Met State was technically in Waltham, but still. Born in 1983 on the mean streets of Somerville to a waitress and bouncer for hire, my parents got divorced when I was 5, and my mother took a job as a maid in Belmont, giving me access to the town's reputable school system. This is where I went to elementary school. Look familiar? Some evidence suggests that Bully is based in 2006, but the environment intentionally features elements that obscure the timeline. The most glaring example of this is the clique known as the Greasers, which is a reference to the film The Outsiders, which is about kids in the 1960s. I graduated from high school in 2001, and we didn't have Greasers. We had theater kids. What I also had was this sweet Nokia cell phone with the extendable antenna. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the game is actually set sometime in the mid-90s and is a combination of the private Belmont Hill School and public Belmont High School. So let's break down the hierarchy. Up top, we've got the jocks. Preppies are second. Then we have your greasers, who we can safely assume were placed higher on the list due to the Houser's general disdain for rich people, but in reality are just kids who can perform songs from the musical Grease on command. Then we've got the bullies, and finally the nerds. I was a punk, also known as a freak, or another word that was more commonly used that started with the letter F.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you femboy.
No, not that one.
Why, hello. It is really fucking hot outside, and I'm smoking, and I'm drinking, and I'm in the woods, for some reason. And at one point, I used to speedrun Bully. Not to brag, but I actually had the world record for a while. You can look me up. I think I'm in Guinness Book 2018 Gaming Edition or some crap. So I was speedrunning the game. And at one point, I accidentally hit a townsperson, giving me an instantaneous red wanted level. And as a result of that, the police were pursuing me immediately. And as that happened, one of the cops got off his bike and tried running after me on foot. I don't know why. Instantly, a prefect hops on the bike. He's chasing me. He just stole a police bike and he's waving his fists at me. He's not taking any prisoners. He's going after me no matter what. And although some of you could argue that this is like a developer oversight that resulted in this happening, it got me thinking. And eventually I came to the conclusion that prefects and cops, and I mean prefects in the game and cops in real life, they're actually not that far apart.
The law always wins.
The law always wins.
There's a line in the game by a character named Thad.
I cannot help but assume that Bullworth is a microcosm for the whole world.
It's actually a really good line because it's true. It's totally accurate. The school itself is a bit of a miniature society when you think about it. You have abusive people on the top. You have sociopaths who rise to power by manipulating others. You have wealthy people getting special treatment. And on top of all that, you have a set of people given a special type of clothing, which represents that they essentially have the ability to smack you whenever they feel like it, if they feel you step out of line, if they feel you violate some kind of rule. During development for Bully, initially the prefects were gonna look like this. Yeah, that's kind of interesting, huh? Yeah, I feel like it's kind of reminiscent of an ideology of some kind. This was removed from the game because it would have been too edgy. It would have been just like too much for the T rating to handle, and so they cut it. They made prefects look like kind of adult-looking students. But even then, they were supposed to have paddles. And before that change, they were supposed to have like batons or billy clubs, and they would beat students with them. Again, too much for the T rating to handle, but essentially what they were initially in the game was a bunch of fucking fascists. Prefects are basically abusive cops in the making. They want power. They want special treatment. They want the ability to get away with things that you and I can't do. Do you feel like any of these types of people would be more inclined to become a police officer or a baker? Abuse by prefects and Bully is not just permitted, it's encouraged. Abuse at the hands of cops is not just permitted, it's rewarded.
This school rewards losers and bullies. I just stand up to them.
How often has it happened that like we've read about a bunch of like cops shooting a homeless dude up in the hills? And then, you know, after there's like a huge outrage, if it even gets any attention, which the vast majority of the time it doesn't. But even if that happens, the likelihood is far greater that the cops are gonna get paid vacations. So it's like, yeah, you killed another human being for no real good reason. You'll go to Disneyland with your stupid family and then, you know, you'll know better. Oh yeah, that'll teach you. The mentality is, if I maintain the status quo, if I defend the powers that be, I will be given special treatment. I'm not gonna be regarded as expendable. I will actually have some of the powers backing me. And although that's true, it doesn't make you a moral pillar of the community. It doesn't make you a good person. Even if you think you're a fucking good cop, you're still partaking in and maintaining a racist fucking system. I don't think there are any good cops. Even if like, you know, you're one of those cops that like plays basketball, you know, with a bunch of kids, or you upload some fucking TikTok video of you doing a goofy fucking dance to some horrible music. It doesn't change the fact that you are enforcing abuse. And even as a person who lived only a couple weeks on the street, like, I can tell you, cops will immediately target you. It doesn't matter. Even if it's like you're just walking with headphones on, they'll stop you. They'll check you for drugs. Not because it's supposed to protect society, because really it would have no effect on society if I smoke a plant. You've got your fucking hand on a gun, and I have a plant in my pocket. But I'm the criminal.
Despite the relatively small map and straightforward gameplay, it's important to note that Bully was actually the first game in the Rockstar HD universe. We know this because hotel heiress Jill von Krastenberg is a Bullworth Academy alum.
Money! Omnipotence! When you're this amazing, the laws of nature just don't apply. Your life is like a soda commercial, where everything is extreme. Look at this house! That's what it takes to make a splash in the ultra-competitive world of being the kid of rich parents who don't pay any taxes. The von Krastenbergs are among the richest people in the world, apart from morally, where they're entirely destitute.
One of the most interesting things about Bully is that there are no NPCs in the traditional sense. Every single character you can encounter is unique and has their own dialogue and backstory that extend far beyond the boundaries of the game. For example, there's Tad Spencer, lovingly referred to by fans as Tad Smith Althorpe Smith, which was his name in the original game documents. More on that later. Tad's father abuses him and his mother and pressures him to assume leadership of the Preppies, all while smuggling booze and other goods to and from Liberty City through his Spencer Shipping Company. The company's success also seems to be at the expense of a smaller local competitor, Blue Skies Shipping. Tad is alleged to have had an affair with Lola Lombardi, the girlfriend of Greaser frontman Johnny Vincent, who has a standing rivalry with preppy boxing champion Biff Taylor, who might be related to townie Zoe Taylor, who lives in Blue Skies Industrial Park and holds a personal grudge against the entire Spencer family, presumably for destroying her neighborhood. Zoe was also a former cheerleader who was expelled from Bullworth the previous year for exposing gym teacher Mr. Burton as a pederast.
I was at Bullworth once. I got kicked out.
Why?
Let's just say Mr. Burton is a dirty creep.
Seriously?
Not only is Mr. Burton an actual creep that at one point makes you steal underwear from the girls' dorm? According to townsfolk like the badass newspaper salesman known only as Osborne, Mr. Burton is only able to keep his job because he has dirt on the school headmaster, Dr. Crabblesnitch. Mr. Burton is also supplying the football team with steroids. The game begins by introducing us to the lower castes of Bullworth Academy, starting with the bullies. The bullies are your typical apolitical douchebags whose only goal is to intimidate those physically weaker than them.
I'm just trying to fit in.
By fighting? By making a nuisance of yourself? That is not the Bullworth way, boy.
Yeah, you could have fooled me.
What?
I said you could have fooled me. This place is full of bullies and maniacs.
Nonsense! That's just school spirit. Hijinks. Why, in my day, we felt nothing of castrating the new boys.
The establishment then uses these incredibly insecure individuals to maintain the status quo, and provides a tense breeding ground for state violence.
I want you to stop bullying weak kids.
Why?
Because there are a bunch of kids around this place who need a beating, and you're picking on the few who don't.
Those most oppressed are the non-clique students, and to a lesser extent, the nerds. The main difference being leader Ernest Jones's insatiable lust for authoritarian rulership.
I won't mince words, my friends. This school needs help. My help.
In many ways, the nerds are a reference to the National Socialist Party of Germany. Instead of confidently offering a better quality of life for all students, Ernest taps into the fears of the disenfranchised, which he understands deeply, and makes wild promises of a new era of education, of course under his strict governance.
How many of you out there feel abused by society? Let down by the establishment? Brutalized? I feel your pain, my children. Do not despair. Salvation is here, my friends.
Nationalism is the concept of a homogeneous society. This does not necessarily mean that everyone must look the same. In a world where racism has been deemed too overt a form of discrimination, nationalism has shifted its focus to behavior.
We wouldn't let you into our gang, Pete, because you're weird.
This is where the concept of the citizen comes into play. A citizen is someone who fulfills the requirements set forth by the government. If you do what you're told, you get privileges.
I can pay you!
Good. I've always been a politician at heart.
An example of this is the American homesteading movement, in which European immigrants were given interest-free loans and literal military power to wipe out any black or indigenous people west of the Mississippi.
A vote for Ernest means a vote for the triumph of brains over brawn.
America's version of National Socialism is the reason many citizens want to shut down the borders and believe in white replacement theory. They wholly believe that equality is impossible, and the only way for marginalized people to get what they need is for someone else to take their place at the bottom of the heap.
Bullworth will be the model for a pure academic curriculum. Money no longer wasted on silly musicals or crafts.
If we compare the 25-point plan of the National Socialist Party of Germany to, say the Constitution of the United Socialist Soviet Republic, we can plainly see that these jerks over here sought to explicitly define what does and does not constitute a human being deserving of rights, whereas these absolute chads over here were explicit about defining the rights being offered, as well as the fact that those rights were available to anyone who existed within the boundaries of the nation, regardless of their citizenship, individual attributes, or abilities. But that kind of stuff doesn't really help the people vying for absolute power, now does it?
You don't get it. My rage, this lack of morals, nothing can stop us.
Okay, I'm going to start this part by reading off the numbers of the Bullworth Bullhorns football players. I've got them memorized. Okay, here we go. 0, 00, 1, 11, 8, and Casey Harris, the only blonde-haired, blue-eyed member, wears number 88. Yeah. At any school, the jocks are the iconic Spartans, the Western symbol of uncontaminated physical excellence. Karl Ottfried Müller was the early 19th century German scholar who first challenged the idea that Greek culture was actually influenced by Egyptian and Indian traditions, instead claiming that the ultra-militarized, eugenics-practicing Sparta was the true pinnacle of the ancient world. In 1928, this guy completely agreed with that sentiment, and would use Müller's ideas to, well, you know. Sparta was a prominent city-state within the region of Laconia that sought to differentiate itself from the rest of Greece, mainly through the harsh domination of children. They also say that the Spartans didn't write anything down, and all of this stuff came from secondhand sources. But the Egyptian hieroglyphs that go back 36,000 years, yeah, those are myth. Anyway, the so-called Spartans believed that kids should not have free access to resources like food, clothing, and education. Everything had to be worked for. However, the Spartan definition of work is rather dubious. In practice, one's value is actually determined by their ability to withstand torment under completely made-up circumstances.
I excel at fixing little boys like you, at making you into respectable members of our community here at the Academy.
Early on, children were assigned, I'm not kidding, a warden, who would then assign prefects, or older kids that kept the younger ones in line through intimidation and state-sanctioned violence if necessary. The youth were then forced to walk without shoes and couldn't change their clothes. Starvation was used to develop resourcefulness. The ability to endure pain was considered a badge of honor. Around the time of puberty, as the tendency to insolence manifests itself, teenagers were imposed with a ceaseless round of work, a contrived and constant round of occupation. If these tasks were not completed, all future benefits were withheld. Thus, the societal pressure to maintain the status quo is enforced through self-preservation.
You keep that nose clean, boy, or I shall clean it myself.
By college age, all Spartan citizens were subjected to competitive physical trials. For women, the participation in sports served only to produce more vigorous offspring, and for men, to be matched together in a strife of valor in order to reach a high level of manly excellence. This ties right in with the whole American Forever War concept we discussed in the last video. All good citizens must constantly prepare and be on guard for the next national security threat. The end goal is for everyone to have a six-pack and be able to fight off hordes of immigrants at any moment. Yep, the movie 300 is just one giant dog whistle. Finally, the supposed creator of the Spartan system of government is the quasi-mythical Lycurgus, whose name literally translates to wolf-maker. Overseas, bully is known as canis canum edit, or dog-eat-dog. The alpha only asserts itself in captivity.
What a hero! A lone wolf!
Uh-huh. Well, no. So here I am at probably the worst school in the country, whose alumni are nothing but arms dealers, serial killers, and corporate lawyers. Real scum.
Of all the cliques, the preppies are by far the most superficial, spending most of their time posturing over their respective families' wealth. Darby Harrington is their leader, a model for a high-end clothing line and school sponsor Aquaberry. He is the son of Mr. Harrington, a local oil magnate and major benefactor of Bullworth Academy.
It takes more than victory to become a champion. It takes breeding and nepotism and snobbery. You filthy Democrat!
Also, in true preppy tradition, Darby is openly dating his cousin, Pinky Gautier.
I don't really like him, but he's my cousin and our family wants us to get married. You know, keep up the tradition.
Wait, marry your cousin?
You know, it used to be brother and sister until it was made illegal.
Preppy culture first developed in the 1900s, but has its roots in the colonial colleges, or the private universities that would become what we now know as the Ivy League schools. The first of these was Harvard College. Although technically not a religious school, it was named after a popular minister and run by Puritans from 1643 till 1708, most notably by clergyman Increase Mather, whose first order of business as president was to instigate the Salem witch trials. He did this because in 1686, King James II of England told him and his son, Cotton Mather, that they couldn't turn Massachusetts into a religious ethnostate.
Who's the boss now? I can't hear you, rich kids! Who's the boss now, my waspy little friend? Answer the question!
You are!
When the Catholic king was deposed by British Parliament in 1688 and replaced by his Protestant daughter, Mary II, a closet lesbian who was forced to marry her first cousin, William of Orange, at the age of 15, and would die from smallpox at the age of 32.
Seems like you've been messing where you ought not.
No, cousins are legal.
Their Massachusetts Charter of 1691 established freedom of Christian worship for everyone but papists, essentially giving the Mathers a license to hunt non-believers. Their first victim was Irish Catholic immigrant Anne Glover. Quick side note. So, as far as I can tell, the history of inbreeding between the British House of Stuart and the French-Welsh House of Tudor traces back to 1565, when Mary, Queen of Scots, married her half-cousin, Henry Stuart, who was promptly murdered just 2 years later in 1567 after the birth of their son, James VI of Scotland.
Is it true you said I was inbred? No, because first cousins is legal, my friend. Legal!
By the mid-1800s, the school had become a bastion for the Protestant elite, and the term Boston Brahmin was coined to describe them. These bourgeois families sought to maintain, quote, the received culture of the old English gentry, including cultivating the personal excellence that they imagined maintained the distinction between gentlemen and free men, and between ladies and women.
Now, Darby is really stupid, malevolent, and rich. So it will surprise none of you to discover in a future life, he'll end up in Congress.
100 years after the children of wealthy industrialists took over a prestigious theological institution, Lisa Birnbach released her groundbreaking satirical reference guide, The Official Preppy Handbook, a send-up of her experiences as a second-generation Jewish immigrant at the prestigious Brown University. With a bachelor's degree in semiotics, a field of study I really wish I knew existed in high school, she would perfectly encapsulate the vapid lifestyle of American aristocracy. However, after 38 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, it was clear that no one got the joke.
From the director of Platoon, the next battle is in the greatest jungle of them all, Wall Street.
A 2004 article from Slate.com describes how this trickle-down trend has been adopted by old money and new money alike to attract attention well into the 21st century.
Are you English? Well, no, I just speak this way because I'm very insecure. You see, my father is a self-made man, so I pretend to be old money, but in fact, I'm really nouveau riche.
For many, the distinction of high social caste is still viewed as a net positive, regardless of the moral implications imposed on them by the starving masses.
Come see me sometime. We can work through these class issues we have.
Oh, I'll work through your class issues all right, sweetie.
I've got a good idea for some fun. Let's go out and torment someone really helpless and unfortunate.
Gary Smith is the game's main antagonist, and represents full-blown DIY fascism. In true rockstar fashion, they are not subtle about it.
Do you know what torture it is to be thinking all the time? No, of course you don't.
Rocking the hipster youth haircut from GTA 5, Gary desperately aspires to the level of preppy or jock, while also resenting both cliques for their petty liberal concessions. He takes no issue with the current hierarchy, besides the fact that he is not the one on top.
Soon, this school will be ours.
I don't want the school.
Yeah, well, I do, pal, and I intend to get it.
Gary is said to be the grandson of Mr. Smith, an elderly man who can be found in Old Bullworth Vale complaining about his irresponsible son. Across town, New Coventry resident Miss Abby is often found speaking ill of Gary's mother. It's assumed that Gary's father is a bit of a malcontent and likes to spend Daddy's money on the wrong side of the tracks when he's not tanking the family business. Despite Peter Vack's legendary voice performance.
I'm thinking bigger picture, and you're worrying about getting into trouble? You know what? You really are something.
Gary primarily works behind the scenes, quietly affecting Jimmy Hopkins' various relationships over the course of the school year. As with some of the preps, I'm going to posit that Gary Smith is actually working in his free time to afford tuition, while also plotting a fascist takeover.
I'm taking over this school, and you're just a liability.
Gary Smith is kind of like Tyler Durden if he went up against a non-toxic version of masculinity instead of attempting to inhabit the body of a trans woman. Oh, you think The Matrix is about a trans woman? Well, yeah, obviously. But also, get this, Fight Club is about a trans woman. Just let that sink in for a second.
You're just like everyone else. picking on the little man.
I'm not like everyone else. Honestly.
As Martin Luther King Jr. once said, true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice.
That old creep thinks he can tame me? We shall see, my friend. I only give people what they have coming to them.
Jimmy Hopkins is the chaotic good of Rockstar Games' protagonists, with the introspective empath Pete Kowalski by his side. He listens to the marginalized.
You okay?
No, I'm not okay! Look at this!
It's just a garden gnome.
No, it's not! It's an insult! It's a joke! It's demeaning! I mean, I'll happily have kids laugh at me or have grown men ask me to do bizarre things to them, but I will not have this! This is so degrading.
Is there something I can do to help?
Defends the homeless.
They keep attacking me, man! I can't take it no more.
Hold on. Which kids?
And might be the first openly bisexual main character ever to be written into a video game? Someone let me know in the comments if I'm wrong about that. All this shit about Rockstar becoming woke in 2022 needs to stop. Every single game they've ever made highlights the plight of marginalized people under capitalism. Just say you hate women and keep it moving. We see you. Bully mirrors the progression of many leftist movements. An enigmatic personality witnesses repression and corruption at the hands of an unjust hierarchy and is compelled to do something about it, forming a revolutionary vanguard and engaging in both mutual aid and direct action. They make themselves known to all offending parties until the abusive activities cease. And just like the characters in Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption, Jimmy is an anti-hero, and he's not without his faults. After installing his brand of justice through compassionate force, the power immediately goes to his head.
Pete, enough!
Yeah, shut up, Pete.
The court must know their king.
Now that a modicum of success has been achieved, the fascist, lying in wait, begins their violent disinformation campaign. While Hopkins basks in his victory, Gary vandalizes the school and blames the newly crowned King of Bullworth. Having recently defaced City Hall, no one really puts it past him, and Jimmy must take it upon himself once again to tame the reactionary and vindictive student body. The climactic ending finds Jimmy back in the good graces of the establishment, and this time, his first order of business is to put his longtime comrade Pete in charge. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Alright, so I said at the beginning of the video that this game is about me personally. Want to see why? I attended Belmont High School with a very diverse group of white people. From actual descendants of the Kennedys, people who murdered their own family members, and also non-Kennedys. No, seriously. I knew a kid named Mike Beasy that grew up in what we called the Belmont Projects, and his dad murdered his mom. The townies are particularly creepy to me. Edgar Munson is quite obviously TJ Wolf, the mysterious leader of the townies in Belmont. He was a few years older than me, was biracial, had a big-ass scar just like this on his face, and got busted for cocaine distribution pretty much right out of high school. You can call bullshit on this if you want, but I'm not good at lying. Clint, aka Henry, bears a striking resemblance to Conrad Seidel, a guy who is like 6'7" and once shoved his giant fist in my face for trying to hook up with his sister. I say shoved his fist because a lot of bullies will just antagonize you physically without actually hurting you just so you'll do something. I didn't respond, so it didn't escalate. There was also a rumor going around that when he lost a fight, he'd come back with a baseball bat. So I'm good on that. All of this occurred right about here, on these train tracks, as we were coming out of what we called the jungle, a makeshift after-school smoke tent that could be found by going down a pathway in the woods for about a quarter mile in this direction. Moving on, Duncan is Mike Irving, another townie who challenged me to a fight right about here, right near another nightly chill spot, the Payson Park Reservoir. Turns out this was also because I tried to hook up with someone's sister, but not his. Keith, who grew up with the bullies, and could be quite aggressive at times, really didn't seem to care that I hooked up with his sister, and was more interested in partying with people than bullying them. He would be diagnosed with schizophrenia shortly after graduation. Gurney looks so goddamn much like Ian, so it's scary. Built like a brick shithouse, he wore this exact same ridiculous 90s goatee, and was the guy that would get drunk and go shoulder check people on the street at 3 a.m. just to see what they'd do. On a few occasions, Ian would be with Terry and Tracy, twins who looked a lot like Leon. Really nice guys, just loved to fight. Not surprisingly, I never learned their last names. Finally, Jerry is Ian's right-hand man, Matt Larry, who also had oven mitts for hands, and threw one of the wildest haymakers you've ever seen, but was usually more interested in trade school and buying a duplex by 30 than beating people up. He did enjoy a good backyard boxing match, though. Whew, boy. Alright, I'm not going to go through the whole cast, but the more I look at it, I feel like I probably could. Darby Harrington was Andrew Nicholas, the class president, and Pinky Gaultier was Caitlin. Some random townie chick and I once beat them both in a Halloween dance competition. With 90s club dancing. Like really aggressive shit. It got serious. Okay.
If you found this video interesting, feel free to leave a comment letting us know how you feel about the game and the video. You could also leave a comment just to kind of like help out this video in the algorithm. It actually does make a difference, and if you want to support independent voices on the internet, if that's the case, you can simply leave a comment telling us how you feel about the video. So yeah, good game.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to hear more about my surreal adventures, check out our video 1999 and the Revolution That Wasn't. I'm also working on a new project called You Just Don't Want to Work, a retrospective, which will document all the jobs that I've stolen from. I mean, worked at. No, I mean stolen from. So stay tuned. Good night, and good luck.
A big old scoots, a big old scoots.